I like it.
It's been 6.5 years.
Thank you. I've been running, so I will share the screen. So it looks like,
You're able, I'm in.
okay. We're ready to,
Once you got the screen up, I'll call the meeting to order.
But you're actually here.
Yeah, I'm in. Virtually.
Something that
Yeah, I like the technology side of things.
it will let you,
Sarah, I didn't get an email
otherwise this
today.
is just, you could just.
It was
share
from
the
Rob.
packet up
I think
there,
you
too.
forwarded it to me.
I know, but I didn't get it.
Okay, well, I have it.
Yeah, it's something I think.
Okay, so just pull up the Plat committee packet and I'll just mirror where you're at. I've shared it for people on here. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with the Plat committee. We are gonna add one item of administrative business really quickly, which is to appoint a chair and vice chair. But before we do that, I'll go ahead and just call the roll to confirm that we have a quorum. Tron and Ray Randolph.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
And I do not see our third member, Edward Bowman on here. He may be the phone number, but, okay. Oh, you want to from other panelists? We have an in-person quorum with just the two of you, which means that any decision you make has to be unanimous 2-0. So would you like to go ahead and move to appointing a chair and vice chair?
I think it would be helpful. I'm not sure if Edward would want to jump into that role. I'm fine with continuing on and you're comfortable with that.
That's fine with me, yeah.
Okay, are you comfortable then with being vice chair?
Sure.
Okay, I guess I'll make the motion that I'll continue on as chair and that Jeff will be vice chair.
Okay, now I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Tron as chair and Jeff as vice chair. A vote in favor is a vote to approve. Jeff Morris,
Yes.
John and Ray Randolph.
Yes,
Okay, motion carries 2-0.
and I guess I'll call case number SMN-23-1. Mispronounce that.
August.
August. Minor subdivision, case, Drew Meyer, you're the planner, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, John. All right. So this is the Topologous minor subdivision. It's a 2-lot minor subdivision preliminary plat that is on 519.17 acres. It's in Polk Township, section 16, 17, 20, and 21. The zoning of this property is forest reserve. The comprehensive plan is designated as farm and forest, and its current use is vacant and has a large amount of DNR classified forest area on the property. There are no waiver requests for this property or this petition. It is zoned forest reserve, as I stated. It's also located in areas 1, 2, and 3 of the environmental constraints overlay as you extend further out from the Lake Monroe proximity. So area 3 being the boundary, the ending boundary of the Lake Monroe watershed. Overall, the petition is to create 2 tracts. Tract 1 will total 369.90 acres, and tract 2 will total 149.27 acres. Originally, the proposal was that tract 1 was going to be sold to the Nature Conservancy, while tract 2 would to be remain in private ownership. Through preliminary conversations with the property owner and the surveyor, it was understanding of staff that tract 1 going to the Nature Conservancy would be for conservation purposes. And in doing so, they would not need to have a septic permit or have to calculate buildable area, that sort of stuff for tract 1. Tract 2, on the other hand, being a private property, would require a septic permit as well as buildable area calculations. Buildable area calculations were provided for tract 2 originally. However, due to a septic permit hiccup in that process. We do not have a septic permit for this property at this time. It is planning staff's understanding that the agreement to purchase the property, the agreement with the Nature Conservancy is somewhat time sensitive. So it was offered by planning staff that the petition proceed to tonight's meeting in the respect that both tracts would be proposed as for conservation purposes. That way they would not have to go through the septic permit process for tract number 2. But in doing so, they would also have the ability later on to come back to the plat committee and ask for a preliminary plat amendment, which would allow for the removal of that conservation for conservation purposes language, at least for tract number 2. Conversations just this afternoon and this morning with the Nature Conservancy. They stated that they were concerned about the language on the plat that states for conservation purposes, something about their bylaws. They're running into some sort of issue with having that language on the plat because it may or may not prohibit them transferring it on to the Forest Service. I don't know all the specifics of that, of their situation with that, but we do have some explanation and some things to talk about with planning staff side of things regarding that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But to continue on with just this petition in general, like I said, it's going to be 2 tracts. The summary for both tracts can be found in table 1 in the packet. The construction general permit, construction stormwater general permit, excuse me, formerly known as Rule 5, will not be required. There's a little bit of details regarding that here in this paragraph. Overall, the property is accessed via East Allens Creek Road, via 2 existing driveway cuts. 2 right-of-way activity permits were provided for this subdivision petition. Right-of-way dedication, there already exists along East Allens Creek Road in varying widths. That's also delineated on the subdivision plat. Environmental conditions, there are a number of various ponds, streams, and slopes over 15% on both tracts, as well as a DNR classified forest area. Again, both tracts are currently vacant, and at the current standing and configuration of the report right now is that both would be dedicated or would serve as conservation for conservation purposes. Department comments, stormwater did not have any comments at this time. And the highway department, I had an initial comment regarding showing the center line and edge of pavements for East Allens Creek Road, which was completed by the surveyor and is delineated on the survey plat included in this report. Here we have some exhibits. This is the county slope map. As you'll note, ridge line, lots of slope areas on this property, as well as the proximity to Lake Monroe. Here's East Allens Creek Road along the southern boundary of the property. Then I have a few other slope maps here that kind of just zoom in a bit to show more detail of the land. I can come back to any of these if we want. Here we have some site photos. These are just all along East Allens Creek Road. And then a couple of pictures of the driveway cuts. This is tract 2, facing north, the driveway cut there. Again, East Allens Creek Road. The petition site is going to be on the right side in these photos as I'm traveling west. Here is another road cut, tract 2. The lake on tract 2. And then approaching tract 1's driveway entrance. And then the driveway cut for tract 1. Here's the findings of facts. These are included in the staff report. And then here we have the preliminary plat. I have a more zoomed in version here. And as you'll note, the language dedicated for conservation is indicated here for tract number 1. The language, that same language hasn't been added yet for tract number 2. But again, the need for that language came about later in the game here because of that septic permit holdup. So that brings me to the end of the packet. I will go to the front of the first page now to talk about our recommendation. Okay, so as it stands currently, planning staff is recommending approval of the subdivision based on the finding that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance and subject to the following conditions. Number one, tract 1 and 2 be designated as non-buildable and that they are for conservation only on the preliminary and final plats. And 2, that deeds for both tracts be recorded with the notation that the lot is for conservation purposes only. Now, again, as I stated earlier, this runs into some contention with the Nature Conservancy. So we do have this part of the ordinance here that talks about subdivision control ordinance that talks about the need for buildable area and other lot size requirements. Is this the right one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this states in chapter 856-7, any subdivision of land for agricultural or conservation purposes not involving any new street or access easement or any non-agricultural structures shall be exempted from the buildable area requirement and the minimum lot size requirement.
Drew, I don't know how it's showing up on the screen.
Oh, it's not.
Oh, I need to share.
I just wanted to snip it real quick so I could refer back to it.
Okay,
I forgot that this screen's not being shared.
me too. What do you need?
And while we're paused, do we know if the participant with the phone number is not Edward, I guess?
I don't believe it is. but-
Okay.
Okay, so I will resume where I left off. This is in the middle of the paragraph. Land subdivided for agricultural or conservation purposes must include the use restriction that shall be recorded on the final plat and incorporated as a recorded commitment referenced on any deed conveying land. So planning staff did prepare an alternate statement. I don't have it written down, that we could apply for this property that cleans up maybe some of the concern with this one about deeds being recorded with the notation for conservation purposes. But I would like to hear if you have any questions at this time and would like to hear as well as if the Nature Conservancy representative is here as well.
I'll go ahead and say they are here, and I think we'll get to them, but first I want to see if Plat committee members have any questions.
I do, but I'd like to hear from the Nature Conservancy first, I think.
I do too, but I want to ask my question, I guess.
Sure.
Could you expand on, I guess, track 2, where we're putting the as a conservancy area, and where we're talking about them coming back to change that in the future? I would like you to expand on it, and then I think I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay, yeah, so the original plan was for tract number 2, this darker gray tract, to remain in private use for the petitioner to use for private uses later on down the line. But unfortunately, there was a hiccup with the septic permit process. So without a septic permit for a private lot that could be developed for residential or other uses that are permitted in that zone, they would not be able to come to the plat committee because we have to have a septic permit for a buildable lot before it comes to the plat committee. And it was our understanding that there is some time constraints with this agreement. So planning staff offered some options to the surveyor and to the petitioner that basically said, we can continue to bring this to the plat committee if you have both of them listed for conservation purposes, because you do not need a septic permit for a lot that's non-buildable for septic purposes or for conservation purposes. So there's an opportunity to remove that special condition later on through a preliminary plat amendment, which they could do later down the road. That could be, right after the final plat of this is recorded, or it could be years from now, however the petitioner would like to proceed with that.
Perfect, and I think that's kind of where my follow-up, in the process of doing that amendment, how does that work? I'm just kind of curious how you're able to kind of go through that process after we take final action at the plat committee on this, and I want to make sure that that option is indefinite for them to take, and this doesn't hinder the ability for you to pursue that amendment in the future.
Sure. to speak on that. It's just a standard procedure. It just really would just require, the normal notice requirements for noticing that there is a plat committee action for this version. And then later on down the road, it would just be a standard preliminary plat amendment. We would require standard filing fees again for that sort of process, because there's work, staff time that goes into that. It would go through the same process. It would come to plat committee. You would see the same report. We would likely reference, hey, in the beginning, remember that we talked about that this could be a possibility. And that we would seek the plat committee's approval at that time. Get more comment on that, and then from there, it would follow that same procedure of if it was approved at the plat committee level, it would go to that notice requirements, and then have that 10-day appeal period as well.
And is that a plat committee decision?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
My biggest concern, I'm thinking of this from a homeowner standpoint, is if we approve this tonight, that limits the ability to build until it comes back. And I think I can say that I would vote in favor of it, knowing that we knew tonight that you're wanting to build a house. But my concern is, what if it's 2 or 3 years from now and it's a different plat committee? To me, that seems like a gamble.
And that's where my question is that path or that process you just laid out, that's open. There is no like backstop where there's some discretion where they couldn't come back in and kind of go through that amendment process, right?
The property owner would still be entitled to a plat amendment, a preliminary plat amendment process. Other subdivisions can go through preliminary plat amendments to change things like perhaps they didn't apply for a subdivision or a sidewalk waiver in the beginning. And then they had to go through the final plat process. And then at some point in the future, they decided that they didn't want to build a sidewalk anymore. They would come back to the plat committee and request a sidewalk waiver.
Right.
And then that decision would be made again at that time, whether or not they approved it or denied it. So a similar situation.
I guess to Jeff's point is, if it's a different plat committee, there's a possibility where that might not be approved, but
All subdivisions that you're approving
yeah,
a plat
they're kind
committee
of
are by
almost like
right.
by right. That's what I was gonna kind of explain is I think unless they're asking for other waivers and such, that it's more of a by right type option. So my main concern was making sure that that process was open as well in the future. So I feel like that clarifies that. So I'm very happy that me and you both have the same concern.
Yeah, that helped. I just didn't want to limit your ability to build if a different group said no in a few years.
Or your ability to come back and pursue that amendment. So, thank you. It's just a few moving parts.
Can I ask a question? Or am I not even part of it? It's okay. We can
kinda
ask
have a
later. We can
process.
ask later.
We
Okay.
can go to the petitioner representative next, which will be you. So, and then we'll finally get to the Nature Conservancy, that's kind of the natural order that we follow. So yes, I'll open it up to the petitioner's representative. So any one of you.
Well, they might have real
ask
questions. I'm just asking what
Right.
about the septic? I mean, did our side mess this up or
I will have to
with the
defer
hiccup?
to
I
the-
don't get who did the hiccup. Was-
Sure.
Okay.
So I can.
Was it
answer that.
me? Because I
No,
hope
so
not.
what happened was, there was a septic permit application that was applied for in January, and
Okay.
the soil test was uploaded. There was some turnover, some changing of positions in the health department, and for whatever
Oh,
reason,
okay.
the online application never got assigned to anyone.
Okay.
Typically, it's automatically assigned to someone, and then it
Okay.
goes through a permitting process, review process. And since it didn't get automatically assigned, it left dormant for
Yeah.
a while. And then when planning staff caught it, we immediately contacted the health department, reached out to the petitioner and the surveyor and stated what was going on and that we would require a septic permit, but here are your options moving forward.
So, but they couldn't just, whenever they received that communication from you, then it wasn't like, oh, okay, we'll just like do the septic permit real quick before this meeting. Like it was too quick of a turnaround for someone to take action.
Right, so they
Right,
have to go
okay.
through their own review process
Okay,
that
okay.
takes however much time, however much
Okay.
staff time.
Okay.
I do know that the health department communicated with the surveyor, Mr. Rector, that they would try to get it issued as soon as possible. They could not promise that. So that's why Mr. Rector and Mr. Twagus had a conversation. And then it confirmed to me that they would prefer to do
Yeah,
the option
okay.
and received for us.
So it really could come in tomorrow. This septic thing. I mean, we don't know. It could be, it could be coming in any day,
Yeah,
or it could be just 6 months or a year. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know the time frame.
sure, because
Okay.
typically what takes the most time with septic permits is the submission of the soil test.
Oh,
But it
okay,
seemed like
okay,
that
okay,
was already
okay.
completed. I thought that I already saw that as an attachment.
Okay,
It seems like at this stage, it's just on the review stages for the health department.
So if the plat committee makes a decision tonight, it's based upon not having that septic
Right.
permit and it not being developable. So regardless, if you want to not withdraw your petition and they decide to approve it, it's preliminary plat amendment to change it.
yeah, I got it.
There's
Got it.
also a few options where we could continue this to the next meeting. I don't know if it grants a special meeting of the Plat committee. I will get to kind of, I guess, the timeline. What I was gonna recommend, unless you want to have more comments, is if we could go to the Nature Conservancy representation and kind of listen to what their concerns on, and then I'll open it back up to you for any additional comments. I think clarifying what their concerns will help kind of move this conversation forward. Does that seem okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
So, Jackie, if you allow them to speak.
Yep. Emily, can you hear us okay?
I can you hear me?
1 second. We're not able to hear you right now.
Okay, can't hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, good, okay. So thank you so much. And I just want to say, big thanks to Rob and the Dupulcuses and to Drew for so quickly integrating us into this as the Nature Conservancy, and that it is truly not my intention to throw a wrench in the works. And that the reality of our intentions for the 359.9 acre tract, as I hope is clear in our name, is that it would be in conservation permanently. But as a big international institution ourselves, and one who works often on land projects with even bigger institutions like the US Forest Service, deed restrictions can be extremely problematic for us, from both the kind of acquisition and kind of legal compliance pathways, as well as long-term as a land trust accreditation committee accredited organization. If there's a deed restriction on land we own, even when we transfer it, and even if it's to another conservation partner like the Forest Service, we are, as the Nature Conservancy, on the hook in perpetuity to monitor and enforce that deed restriction. And we are not able to offload it to any partners, or so it's kind of a situation where, although we can say in many ways that to take this land, our intentions would be for conservation purposes only, and were we to in any way transfer, sell, donate these lands, they would continue to be for conservation purposes. Having that written in a deed is makes an acquisition very difficult for us. And so when we saw the board packet earlier today, that the recommendation was to have a deed notation for both tracts, that's what raised our concerns. And I'm learning through the course of this meeting that in Monroe County, unless you have a deed restriction, your land is developable and requires, it sounds like, these, the buildable area assessment, a septic permit. Of course, I'd love to hear if there are any alternatives to recognizing that the Nature Conservancy, as the party who hopes to own these 359.9 acres before the end of April, has no intentions to build, but we also would love to do anything possible to avoid having a deed restriction on that property. So that's the nature of our concern. And I am open to hearing from the experts in the room about the best way to ensure all parties get what they need in a timely manner.
So thank you so much. I want to bring it back to planning and see if you wanted to have any questions, to ask to kind of maybe figure out a good, path forward.
Sure. So thank you, to Emily to give us that background. It's helpful. I know we just started emailing today, so it's a little bit of a short notice. I guess to lay out some options, I don't know what everyone's timeline is for the transfer, but typically the plat committee meets once per month. It is an option to continue this to the next plat committee meeting if you do not feel that the decision being made tonight would benefit either party. That could give you time to get a septic permit. That could give Emily time to review with her legal team about whether they also want to get a septic permit and not have the conservation easement on their property. I do have some information, Emily, about other parts of the subdivision control ordinance, which says that a septic permit is not required if the lot is 10 acres. And is not for development, which is a little different than conservation. But it sounds like there may be an interest in developing the property, which includes but is not limited to construction of roads. We can talk to our legal attorneys as well if it's regarding forestry activities. There are some protections for forestry. But the permanent conservation easement under our ordinance does say that it would not be, basically, you would have to keep it in its natural state, which I think is your concern. So we can get clarification on that. But we obviously, if you want us to move forward, the other option is to approve as is today. And then if you would like to change that, we can come back for a preliminary plat amendment that does mean new filing fees. And a new timeline. So continuing is probably the faster option. So that would, I guess, be up to the parties that are the decision makers.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm kind of curious now, since we've mentioned the timeline, do we have kind of a defined timeline here? Are you comfortable with disclosing that timeline?
Well, Emily just said it. Emily, I think she's still on the line. It's in April. We don't have an exact April date, but April is like the longest that we could possibly go without closing. If we don't close by some date in April, then the whole thing's.
And I guess
They're all their rules.
Well, I do want to, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do want to say, so the wording of the option, we did recognize that, at least I was coming into the option knowing that a subdivision would be necessary and not knowing a lot about Monroe County's process for the subdivision. So the current agreement does have us, set to close no later than April 28th, if we add up the days. But it does also give the Nature Conservancy, as the buyer, the ability to extend that closing date in order to resolve anything related to survey or subdivision needs. So of course, I'm speaking for the Nature Conservancy and I think probably also for the landowners, we would probably love to avoid extending that closing date beyond April 28th. We do, though, have that availability or ability if we cannot. If our best path forward for these subdivisions would force us beyond April 28th, we can amend the closing date to allow that, just as a backup.
that's awesome to know. Thank you. I want to bring it back to the petitioners. If you want to just add any more substance to kind of the petition that we're looking at, or if you have any thoughts about continuing this maybe to our March meeting to kind of give a little more time for the health department to do their septic review and potentially allow the Nature Conservancy to kind of consider what options they are there. I'm sure, would I be correct in assuming that you would be working with the Nature Conservancy a bit to kind of figure out how to make this move smoothly?
We can continue to work with them. Yeah, Drew's been in communication with them. And Sean also has his hand raised. Is that somebody?
We'll get to that public right after.
Oh, the survey.
that is-
Sean is the surveyor, Sean
Well,
Walker.
would you, yeah, please work to, is that fine for the surveyor to speak?
Yeah.
My question was, if we wanted to continue this on to March and run everything through like a normal subdivision with both lots without restrictions, when would you need to have an updated plat? With buildable area for both lots, the soil test done for both lots, and all the additional septic permit applied for.
What is the plat
It'll
committee?
be the third Thursday, so you probably need it by the ninth.
Yeah. To answer that question, the packet gets published on the 9th
Of
of
March.
March. Of course, there is some room to, add additional items after that, but it won't be included in the packet, and they would have to be likely included as a condition of approval.
Well, I'm just, my comment then is that wouldn't be a problem for me to have that updated, to show that additional buildable area and the setbacks and stuff on the other lot, if that is what's needed to keep everything moving forward.
Perfect, that's even better news. So it seems like there's a lot of options, so please, what are your thoughts?
Well, my only concern is that the rules have changed in the processes of the 70 years that my dad's owned this land.
Right.
And I'm not, my only concern is that, oh yeah, we have a meeting, oh yeah, you can do that later, and then like you say, I don't know, new committee, different committee, one person, one article on paper, and all of a sudden you can't do it. And
Well, you'll be
I don't have
working
any
with us.
plans for this, and I'm not sure about doing buildable areas and all that. Nobody's asked me about that. They asked me, I just say, I don't have any plans. I'm selling half of it, and the kids are going to get the other half, or the rest of it. And, I don't know if I change my mind tomorrow, but right now we have no plans and talked to no one and done anything. So all I want to do is, I would like to get it over with. It's only been 5 years we've been screwing around with this, and I'm not, so I'm open to suggestions, but that's my only concern.
In a nutshell, so
If we can get it done, the next month, it sounds like it's a septic permit. Hell, is there a mistake? Send somebody out tomorrow. What the hell,
I will say that the health department has been understaffed, so, there might be just a little lag kind of with certain things. And, but outside of that, just to your first point, these are just kind of the adopted ordinances that we have, and they're kind of our guiding documents. So I'm hearing kind of one of your concerns is, you have to come back let's say in a time where you're not working with the same people here that are here today. So if you continue it to March, then we're going to be the representation at the Plat committee. And it also, I think that gives planning some time to work with the Nature Conservancy. I think that gives the health department some time to dig into the septic permit, and then just kind of have all the information needed where when maybe you wouldn't have to come back. And I think March seems like a reasonable target to give everyone ample amount of time. And I think from what your surveyor stated, that gives them plenty of time. I can't speak on behalf of the health department, but I would assume, since it seems like we did the soil boring, that will give them ample amount of time. And I think that would.
already taken the soil sample?
Yeah. I think you guys will have all of your issues resolved for your tract in another month. I think that you'll have time to have a septic permit issued. I do have concerns that the Nature Conservancy will not be able to have time to get a septic permit because of the involvement of the soil test and
Why do they
applying.
need a septic permit?
Well, if they don't want any restrictions, then they can go ahead and apply as if it's gonna be a developable lot. Otherwise, there needs to be restrictions for conservation. Our
I-
term for development includes roadways, construction of roadways. And so if they want to do logging and they want to create roadways throughout the site, it technically falls under development.
I was able to get my soil test done in the same week, and then she had it back within like 2 days. And then when I talked to the health department, they told me I was number 10 on the list, and it would be about 2 weeks for the septic permit.
Okay,
So I think it's doable for all. I mean, based off of what I heard last week, I think it would be doable for everything.
Okay, we'll work with the Nature Conservancy then and give them the options.
And I'll go ahead and say that I'm leaning towards wanting to continue this. And it seems like the most logical approach. And also, just with that, if you had any further comments, if not, I want to open it up to the public. If there is anyone that's here, please.
I just have a question about like the procedure of this whole thing. So let's say we extend it to next month. Everybody gets whatever they want. Everything seems like it's gonna be approved, but what does that mean to you guys? So let's say something gets approved.
Mhm.
I'm hearing the word preliminary and then it will be approved, but then do you extend it further for like final or what? Like what happens at this approved?
Yeah.
Once something's approved at a meeting from you guys, what then?
Yes, so once something is approved by the plat committee as a by right subdivision, meaning that
Yeah.
there's no waivers or anything
Yeah.
like that. So theoretically, it would be approved at the March 16th meeting, then there's a 10-day appeal time period. Where notice letters go out to neighbors of the subdividing property that states. The plat committee has made an action, if you have any concerns over their action. Based on the subdivision control ordinance, you have 10 days to file an appeal.
Okay,
If no appeals are filed within 10 days. We can proceed with continuing with the final plat. In that 10-day period, the final plat application can be submitted. We just can't release any final plats until after that appeal period. All the
Okay.
final plat is basically one last checklist through of just saying, Sean will create, Mr. Rector will create a new plat that says final plat on it. Sometimes they have a little bit less detail, sometimes they don't include all the topographical lines. This plat is the one that's going to go to the recorder's office and get recorded. So once that application is completed, that can be a very quick turnover. Depending on if there's no lingering issues with the details of the plat or anything else that may come up. That turnaround can be rather quick. And then that procedure, they get it gets printed on Mylar, and then it's like a specific type of material that can be recorded.
okay,
That document is given to you by the surveyor, or the surveyor himself will bring it to our office where we give an official stamp and get the planning commission president to sign it and the planning director to sign it. Once all the signatures are there and the stamps are there, then you can take it to the recorder's office and the auditor's office, and that's your final step. It's officially created, the land transfer can initiate.
Does that look like it would be the 30th? Could be.
It has to be 31 days for they have preliminary.
I thought it was 10 days.
It's the appeal process is 10 days,
Oh, the
but
appeal
because you
process
don't
is 10
send the
days.
letters right away, it's 31 days to accommodate the letters going out. The 10 days from when they received the letter,
Mhm.
and then if anyone does a successful appeal, then we notify them. So the
So
fastest it
31
could be
days,
is what,
But that same
April
appeal
16th,
process would occur if they came back, right, as well?
technically April 17th.
April 7th.
Yeah, let's just
Give me the curve.
if we,
Yeah. So
if we decide now.
just the appeal process, that when they came back with the amendment, you still have that appeal.
They wouldn't be coming back for an amendment.
No, as is,
Uh-huh.
if we moved it as is, so it's,
Yeah.
it's not like you're sidestepping that appeal process is
Mhm.
going to occur.
Right.
I didn't quite happy. man.
So what was the date? I'm
What is the
sorry.
Nature Conservancy, what's their concern exactly? Or have they given a counter wording for the?
no, honey, they just looked it up, they just responded today, they just like saw this language and then realized it could be a problem for them today.
Okay.
So the point is, they're trying to purchase something, but then they want the ability to then pass it on, okay, into the future to whatever. And if there is any sort of restriction, let's say, or it's an encumbrance, or it's this certain language, if there's any language on top of just this basic thing, then it might not be transferable to the next person, or the next person, or the next person. So then their agent, their company then is stuck with making sure everything is conserved, which they can't guarantee that for 5,000 years from now. So they're just trying to change the word from conserve to something else, but they don't have a proposed
We
language
don't have to
today
propose it.
because they just figured this out.
Right.
I think that is the point.
That was a very good, very close. Our hope really is just that we not have to add anything extra to the deed. You know, nothing that restricts it but for exactly those purposes that you described, so that we can keep all of our options open for what happens to this land after we hold it.
Perfect.
But then does it need to, so then you have to go back to the buildable lot then, Emily? Are you stuck then?
Well,
making your land be buildable?
well, I do think that we at the Nature Conservancy need to follow up with Drew or others about what our options are.
Okay.
It sounds likely though that the only way, or at least from what I'm hearing today, that the only way to you know, to have this subdivided, this tract one, the soon to be hopefully TNC tract, subdivided and not have any restrictions added to the deed means we'd have to get it subdivided at, you know, what that probably highest level of scrutiny is, which would be as if you could do anything and everything on it. So make it buildable, even though,
Okay.
you know, in reality, that's not our intention or any of our future transfer partners' intentions, but it sounds like that's the way we keep restrictive language off the deed.
Yeah, okay.
With that, I want to indicate that, I can't, his name is Sean, the surveyor, sorry, I wasn't able to remember what the last name was. He was asking, when is the earliest we would be able to file for amendment? If you're able to answer that.
There's no, well, I don't believe there's an amendment needed. You're gonna continue the.
Right. Yeah, so I guess let's get there if that's what we end up doing. So, with that, I'm gonna kind of bring it back to the Plat committee. It's been a very helpful conversation. I think we are all kind of have goals to try to move this forward and get behind and support it. With that, I want to open it up to the public. If anyone from the public came to speak to this petition tonight, please go ahead and just raise your hands and we'll send you an unmute button.
There's no one from the public attending.
Okay, not surprised. All right, with that, I'll bring it back to the Plat committee, and I guess at this point, we would be looking for a recommendation, and I feel like continuing it is going to be best for all parties.
I would agree. It feels rushed to me to try to make a decision tonight. I think if we approve it tonight, then both parties are going to have to come back and make amendments, which will just further extend the time. So I feel like in the grand scheme of things, extending it a month now is going to save a lot of time.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to continue this to our March meeting. And Drew, what was the date of that? I just had it up.
That would be March 16th.
March 16th, Plat committee meeting. I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this petition to the March 16th, 2023 Plat Committee meeting, which will occur here in this room at 4 p.m. Hybrid. So vote in favor is a vote to continue. Shannon Wright Randolph,
Yes,
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 2-0.
that was our only item on the agenda, so I will call for adjournment for the Plat committee.
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry